Ted Cruzin or Bruisin?
Welcome to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Claire.
And welcome back to the Lions of Liberty podcast. This is episode number 175, and that means if you've been following along that you can find the show notes over at lionsofliberty.com/175. And if you are a fan of this program, one way you can support us is by shopping through our Amazon affiliate link. If you do that, we get a small kickback to further fund and expand this operation with great new shows like the one you're about to hear. You can find that link at lionsofliberty.com/Amazon or at the show notes page or on the main page of our website. So go check it out. And today, we've got a very special little episode we're going to do. And to introduce that to you, I'm going to bring in our resident expert in all things, Rand Paul, even though that's not what we're talking about today. He, of course, Mr. Brian McWilliams.
Yes, good to be here. I know we're doing a little bait and switch action here. They hear my voice. They're thinking Rand Paul's and minuses, but aha, that's not what we're doing.
So what exactly are we doing, even though the top of the show probably sort of gave some
Probably gave a little bit tip of the hat there. What we're doing today is we're going to actually do a very special episode called Ted Cruzin or Bruisin, where we're going to look at basically the political positions of Ted Cruz. And you might say, why the hell would you do that, Marc and Brian? And I'll tell you why. Basically, Ted Cruz has been starting to get a little momentum among libertarian circles. And they say, okay, like, for example, the Libertarian Republic just did a write-up, why you should support Ted Cruz. Here's 10 reasons why. There's been, obviously Ted Cruz back in October had 51% of the vote during a New Hampshire Liberty caucus. Rand Paul had 57% because you can vote more than once. It's very confusing. But basically, he's been gaining momentum, especially as Rand Paul's kind of fallen a little bit behind and Ted Cruz has risen up. So we owe it to our listeners, we owe it to all libertarians everywhere to look at his positions and say, is this guy really worth our time? Is he worth our support? And will he ever change his haircut?
What's your issue with Ted Cruz's haircut? Is it
he's like a it's bizarre. He looks like
a greaser,
back. Huh? Yeah, it's really bizarre looking. It's like straight out of the 80s, that greased back, weird kind of Lego haircut. I don't even know if we can change it.
It's like the Fonz meets a Lego figure.
Hey!
And less cool, obviously.
God, if Ted Cruz started doing Fonzie impressions, then he would actually get my support.
Then that would be a Cruzin, I guess.
That would be a Cruzin.
So if you're fans of Rand Pauluses and minuses and you're used to the Paulus minus system, just translate the Pauluses to Cruzins and the minuses to Bruisins, and you should be able to follow along.
Bingo,
Simple
baby.
enough. We may not give Ted the full, sound effects treatment because, does he deserve it? I don't know. We'll know by the end of the show.
Exactly.
So where do we want to start with Teddy Cruz here? I mean, obviously, like you said, he's seen some rumblings of support against among liberty activists, libertarian types. I don't know how you want to classify everyone. Some people might see themselves more as, quote, liberty Republicans or just Republicans, but he is getting support in the mainstream for sure. And also you're hearing rumblings of people that maybe, used to support Rand Paul, maybe even used to support Ron Paul, talking about, well, maybe this Cruz, since he's gaining traction, since he shares a lot of the same positions as Ron Paul, at least on the surface, maybe he's a guy we should throw ourselves behind if we're afraid of a Rubio, if we're afraid of a Donald Trump, and maybe he's just the next best option that a lot of people see as viable.
That's the thing. That's the key phrase, the next best option. I think that's what people are looking at Rand Paul, and, like I said, they're saying, okay, Rand may not cut the mustard here. Who's next? And they're looking at Ted Cruz. Now, let's look at some of his issues and see, is it worth it? Number one is Ted Cruz, when you look at a lot of libertarians, you talk to libertarians, they say, oh, well, Ted Cruz is great on the NSA. He's great on, protecting our personal privacies. But
so why don't we start with why people think that in the first place? Then we'll get to maybe the counterpoint.
So here's why.
Is one.
Ted Cruz took part in the filibuster against the Patriot Act. He helped Rand Paul in that regard, and he's been fairly outspoken previously about, how the government should not be spying, how should they not get into our personal privacy, protecting our phone records, and against this massive blanket warrantless spying that was going on by the NSA. Now, he was, as I said, part of the filibuster that killed off the 215 parts of the Patriot Act that were the most kind of egregious when it came to spying. And basically, he threw his full weight behind the USA Freedom Act, and he was one of the co-sponsors along with Senator Lee. Now, the USA Freedom Act was supposed to, be a Patriot Act light that actually respected our personal privacies and was supposed to put in some protections in place so that you could not do this blanket warrant.
Well, it has the word freedom in it, so it must be good.
How could it be bad? It has nothing to do with freedom, by the way. They just like to slap that label on, just like they slap labels on anything. Like the Patriot Act had nothing to do with being a patriot either. And Patriot missiles. How does that have to do with patriotism?
Oh, you're defending the homeland.
The homeland, firing missiles across massive
and
miles.
rockets.
So, Cruz basically, he put forth the USA Freedom Act as this better solution. However, as you know, and as many people may know, the USA Freedom Act actually expanded a lot of spying capabilities.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Ted Cruz is actually on record saying that, okay, well, one of the things it does is before you were limited in what you could actually do and what records you could collect. Now you can collect cell phone records and you collect, V over IP internet phone records. So while there are certain protections put in place, like, now they have to get a warrant, he's actually expanding a lot of what the government can do, and a lot of the provisions that usually expire, like the Patriot Act, the expired is how they got rid of 215. Now those provisions don't expire. So in truth, it could just go on forever. So this thing is arguably worse in a lot of ways.
And when you say they have to get a warrant, this is still kind of the FISA type warrant where, you may say they have to get a warrant, but when it comes to FISA warrants, this was something in the 70s they came up with to limit spying. But it turns out in the FISA court, something like 99.9997% of the stuff that comes in there gets approved. It's basically a blanket approval of warrants that come in. I imagine that under the Freedom Act, it'll be the same thing. It's a rubber stamp to make everyone feel warm and fuzzy, but it's not a true balance.
Right. Well, it's like when police get in trouble a lot of the times and they say, okay, well, we're going to have a police tribunal to see if they're innocent or guilty, if they should be charged. They never get charged. It's the same thing. Why would they charge?
Police tribunal? What's that?
Well,
is that a real thing?
They do their own investigations internally a lot of the time for police officers.
Yeah.
And, they come back and they say, no, he's fine. Yeah,
no, we looked at him. He's totally good.
Yeah, it's all good.
In fact, we gave him a promotion.
It's like the FISA court's the same thing. What do you want to spy? Okay, all good. Yeah, that's fine.
No, he didn't that kid beat himself up. We don't have video of it, but
Stop punching yourself. Stop punching yourself. Basically like that when you're beating up your little brother. So that's his NSA. Basically, that's the NSA position, which I don't know about you, but I consider that a bruising.
I definitely consider that a bruising. And there's not just because it's bad, but it's even worse to me because at least with someone like Lindsey Graham, Rick Santorum, Chris Christie, I appreciate the fact that these guys are outward Nazis on this issue.
Yeah, they're upfront about it.
We're going to suck up your data. We're going to spy on you. You need to lose freedom to gain security. They're just upfront with it, and I respect that at least. At least they're not trying to finagle around and act like they're one thing and when they're really something else. Whereas Ted Cruz, he tries to play this liberty, freedom guy while supporting basically the same bad stuff these other guys do,
right,
which is what makes him even more dangerous.
Yeah, it's like Liberty Kabuki Theater. He's out there in the mask, the Liberty mask, but then behind the scenes he pulls it off and he's a totally other guy.
You know what you just did, right?
What?
You basically just committed yourself to a Photoshop with Ted Cruz and a kabuki mask. Hey, that's what the people want.
I don't know why I do this.
They want Photoshops. They need a reason to go to the show notes page at lionsofliberty.com/175 to see your amazing Photoshops. Everyone loved your Severus Cruz.
Severus Cruz was fantastic.
Why don't we touch on the Severus Cruz theory briefly, since we're bringing it up, since other people might not. Who doesn't listen to our shows every week? I don't know. But if you heard our Year in Randy Pants episode, which you can, of course, find ticking back in your iTunes feed, a couple episodes, but Brian came up with this theory after watching Harry Potter that it's possible, maybe that's the glimmer of hope, that Ted Cruz is our version of Severus Snape. Spoiler alert, if you have not seen the Harry Potter movies yet, like 5 years later, it turns out Severus Snape, even though we think he's a villain the whole time, is actually always on Harry's side. And the theory is maybe Ted Cruz, even though some of us see him as a villain, maybe he's just doing what many people said Rand had to do, which was kind of toe the neocon line to get in power, rip off his shirt to reveal the Ron Paul and the Fed bring the troops home t-shirt, and reveal that he was with Liberty the whole time, too.
We can only hope.
Can only hope. And I mean, there's some credence to the theory. If you look all the way back, he was originally endorsed for the Senate in 2012 by Ron Paul. So, maybe he was christened early on and now he's got to play a little neocon. I don't buy this at all, by the way, but it's an interesting theory to play around with.
I don't know if I do necessarily either. I like to throw these things out as possibilities. But he could be Severus Snape or Darth Vader, where he was a force of good and and on the right side, and then he got corrupted by
Well, that means he's going to end up killing the... spoiler alert if anyone hasn't seen Return of the Jedi yet. But yeah, so that means he's going to, I guess, kill the Emperor at the end?
Yes. Who would that be? Mitch McConnell? Is Mitch McConnell getting thrown into the lightning reactor?
God, I'm not sure who the Emperor is.
Who's the big baddie right now?
Isn't it like Spigneski, Brzezinski, or one of those like shadowy like New World Order guys?
Probably.
Yeah, I think it's someone we've never even seen.
Oh my God, someone we don't know about. Somebody that's
smoking
that's
a very long cigar right now.
The Bilderberg Conference.
Yes.
All right, moving on. Now this is one we're going to move on to warfare, where I think we can all pretty much unanimously agree Ted's not so great on.
Well, what's his quote from the last GOP debate? He said he wanted to see if sand could shine.
Yeah, sand could glow in the dark.
Glow in the dark. Yeah, that's nice.
Which is scary because he's like talking about car bombing. He's like, are you going to use radioactive weapons? Are you dropping nukes? Is what you're talking about? So it's like, at least he's up front in this regard. But I think we can all say he's pretty awful when it comes to war.
Yeah, he seems to be all about doing it. He doesn't really give any sort of statements about, being even remotely restrained when it comes to foreign policy or perhaps negotiating with certain countries or anything like that. He seems just as neocon on the surface as all the other guys, as most of the other guys, I guess.
Yeah. And now we had talked a little bit before we actually started recording here about, Ted Cruz is a notorious flip-flopper. And this is another issue where he actually did flip-flop. So I was doing a little bit of research in some of his past positions. And back in the day a little bit, he had actually said that he was against us getting involved in these civil wars and against, taking outward actions. He was against putting boots on the ground. And then you flash forward to more recent times and he's saying, oh, no. All options are out there, whatever it takes to kill ISIS off and yada, yada, yada. So he's gotten more neocon. He's gotten more war hawky as he's gotten along.
Well, that sounds like a Bruisin too.
That is a Bruisin.
All right, another Bruisin. I feel like I'm feeling a trend here.
That's two black eyes.
Maybe a good number of Bruisins for this character. All right, well, what else we got to look at when it comes to Cruzin?
Well, what do you want to talk about? I don't want to just take away all the thunder of the show.
Well, the issue I'm passionate about the most is probably the war on drugs, mostly because I think it's the most obvious affront to individual liberty. Policies which basically attack people for doing things such as owning plants and using them for medicine or using them for whatever reason. And they result in SWAT teams in people's houses that have done no harm to other people. So to me, the war on drugs is one of the most clear-cut liberty issues. I mean, it should just end tomorrow, no questions asked. So what's Teddy Cruz's position on the war on drugs?
Well, good news, bad news on that.
Okay. Oh, no. So, what's the good news? Let's start with a minor Cruzin, maybe.
All right. Here's the good news. This could be a mini cruise. So here's the good news: lately, as people have opened their minds up to the fact that maybe marijuana is not so bad, maybe it's got medical usage, Cruz has pulled back on his earlier position, which was completely anti, legalization in every way and pro keep the war on drugs going full born.
Now he takes more of a states' rights kind of stance.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like more of a federalist approach,
which is not good, but it's like a way for Republicans who are against this stuff, like, that do support the war on drugs, to still sort of sound like, maybe I would be for it because I'll let the states do it. And like Republicans love to hear the phrase states' rights. So it's like a little middle ground for them to be able to.
It's a little bit of a cop out,
Totally. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a way of saying, I think drugs are bad, but I also believe in states' rights because I'm a Republican.
Right, exactly. So, boys will be boys, you states, you naughty states.
Oh, you risk, Colorado, you. I support your right to do this, but I'm going to shake my head and point my finger at you.
No, get out there and play kick the can. So, yeah, that's his basic stance now. He's more of a federalist. But, previously he had been really anti-legalization and not open to any sort of reforms about it. And go.
No, well, that makes you wonder, if he got into office, would he really support that states' rights position? Or is he just saying this on the campaign trail because support for the war on drugs, at least when it comes to marijuana, is waning in the public eye? And, again, it's nice to say states' rights is a Republican. But, when it comes down to it, he seems like an authoritarian on several other issues. So what's to say he wouldn't be on this one, too?
And good point there, because there's all these, like, he wants to say abortion on a federal level, would be outlawed. So Ted's kind of picking and choosing his positions that he says are states' rights or aren't states' rights. So when he gets into office, if he gets into office, I would say he probably would say
a Cruzian slip.
Cruzin slip. He would say enforce the federal marijuana laws that Obama had said, okay, we're not going to enforce these, which Cruz called out Obama and using his executive authority in that way. And I agree with him, I guess, in that regard, even though I'm for the decriminalization of marijuana. But, I'd say Bruisin.
Bruisin on the war on drugs, too.
Yeah.
Well, that's no good.
No, not good at all.
Right, what other issues? What do you think is good about Ted Cruz? I mean, is there something we can say is actually pretty good on this one issue that we can, maybe hasn't flopped on?
I will say he is pretty good on the Second Amendment.
Okay. That's
So-
one that most liberty-minded people will also support.
Right, that's so he's pretty adamant about your Second Amendment rights and your ability to defend yourself within the household. Now, he has flip-flopped a little bit on the background check issue because he was for, background checks and advancing, kind of more stringent background checks. Now he's pulled back on that a little bit in the wake of the most recent shootings and kind of going with the political winds. But overall, he is a pretty strident supporter of Second Amendment rights. So that one is a Cruzin.
A Cruzin.
A novel
I
Cruzin.
love it when we're cruising together with our guns in our holsters because he supports the Second Amendment.
I don't know if that rhymes so much.
It wasn't supposed
Your rap career ended before it began.
It's freestyling. Doesn't need to rhyme.
Okay, I didn't realize you were
Actually,
doing prose instead of poetry.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's one he's good on. He's also
I'll give him a little
not
fist
too
bump
bad.
for that.
It's like Obama fist bump.
Yeah.
Is that the worst thing about Obama, by the way? Or is the
Just
worst
fist
thing that he
bumps?
rides in cars drinking coffee with Seinfeld?
It's the worst thing that doing those things makes people think he's great.
Yeah, I just don't.
Therefore, hey, he was funny on Seinfeld. Therefore, I support his gun control positions.
Right.
What?
It's like, get to work. You have things better to do.
Read a book.
Jesus Christ.
All right.
One more thing I'll talk about that Cruz is decent on. He's not too bad on the government spending. He pretty much tries to rein that in, although that is countered somewhat by the fact that he wants to go to war, which of course costs billions and trillions of dollars. So as much as you can talk about curbing government and balancing the budget,
especially if he's going to turn the Middle East into glass, those nukes are expensive.
It can't be cheap to do that.
You're going to need a couple of them too to see how much of it glows in the dark. If you really want to carpet that thing up,
at least 6.
Make it glow. If you want to see it from space, you're going to need at least 6 to 10 nukes.
Right.
Based on my calculations.
Oh, beautiful. I like that you broke it down so I didn't have to.
Yeah, I had my top engineers, our top Lions of Liberty engineering consultants, do a little research before the show.
Beautiful. Love it.
Yeah.
Those are his major positions. I won't go into too many of the nitty gritty ones that libertarians don't necessarily care that much about.
I also hear he's really good on Obamacare. Is there any truth to
what?
that?
He is. He actually, I believe the bill right now that is on Obama's desk, Ted Cruz was a sponsor of. And of course, Obama already vetoed it. It got through the Senate, no problem.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I probably wouldn't repeal a bill called Mark Care if it came to my desk because it's my name. Hey, I'm not repealing that.
On that basis of that alone, it doesn't matter if it's a bill to kill all babies. You're like, nope, you know what? I'm going to keep this going. I got a legacy to protect.
Claire Care, never getting vetoed.
That's catchy.
Yeah, I should run for office on it.
I don't think I have no name that would work with healthcare. I don't.
No, you're done. Your political career's over.
McWilliam injections.
Yeah, no,
it's not happening.
Sorry,
but no, that's that one's he's really pushed for, and I was actually surprised. I thought a lot of the Republicans were just going to do a lot of open, empty talk about actually repealing Obamacare, but hell, it made it to his desk, so we'll see what they do now.
I kind of think it is empty talk still because I think that they know it's going to be vetoed, so it is just political theater anyway.
Yeah.
It's not like they had a veto override vote; they never will, at least not with the current structure of the Senate and the House. So it still is kind of political theater.
It is, although it's lying in wait. I guess if we can get a Republican in the White House, although if Trump's there, he probably wouldn't repeal it because he's all for it.
Well, he doesn't like Obamacare. He wants to bring in Trump Care or whatever, his version of it. That's what he says. But, here's my problem with the whole just end Obamacare thing. It's not that I'm not opposed to Obamacare. In my life, I've been more affected by Obamacare than anyone we know. I've lost a significant amount of work because of it. My insurance that I pay for out of pocket because I'm a freelancer has skyrocketed. Thankfully, I found Health Excellence Select and Health Sharing, which you can learn more about at lionsofliberty.com/health. So I'm not feeling the burn too bad when it comes to that one. But,
Did you just plug health and Bernie Sanders?
I think I did. I think somehow I did. Secretly. It's like the Beatles album.
He's infiltrating your mind.
There are many secret messages hidden within Lions of Liberty.
Yes. If you play it backwards, by the way, a delicious recipe for pot brownies.
Oh, boy. How would I ever get that recipe? Come on.
Not from Ted Cruz.
Not from Ted Cruz. That's for sure. But yeah, anyway, my issue with the sort of defund Obamacare, repeal Obamacare thing is if you just repeal Obamacare and don't address the underlying issues in the way the health system is run in the United States, that being a cartelized corporatist system, you still are going to have so many problems with people, and then they're going to blame the repealing of Obamacare on it, which there may be some truth to it for some people. I mean, the fact that it is covering some people that couldn't get coverage before, I mean, I don't think it's good the way they're going about it, but it is a response to all the cronyism over the years and the cartelization of this industry, which we've talked about so many times on the show, most recently with Dr. Jeffrey Singer. And we'll link to that in the show notes, of course, at lionsofliberty.com/175. But yeah, that's my issue, is that it seems it's like a grandstanding thing, but politician that proposes it, all these Republicans, they don't present any solutions that address the root problems of why healthcare is so difficult. It's not like healthcare just started getting difficult in 2012. The cries for Obamacare came from somewhere, and they, in many ways, came from legitimate places, even if I completely disagree with the way that it's gone about to address them. So that's my issue there, and that's why I still, once again, kind of see Ted Cruz as just another politician on this stuff, because he doesn't talk about root causes.
No, Rand Paul's the only one that really talks about any of the root causes.
And even he doesn't do it as much as I'd like, but he is the only one that even tries to scratch at the root.
It just doesn't. It's like justice reform. It doesn't come up that much in debate, so they never talk about it. Everything in debates is always talking about ISIS and this and that. ISIS and the economy.
It's all the fear stuff.
It's all 9/11.
What are you most afraid of? You're afraid of gun violence. You're afraid of terrorism, and that's what we're going to harp on. And maybe we'll mention taxes if we feel like.
Yeah, well, if we get a little extra time, we got to kill before the next commercial break with you taxes.
Right.
Yeah. So we're talking about Trump here. As a second option to Rand, and we'll do a little Rand update later maybe, but as a second option to Rand, let's say, we all want Rand to be the front runner. If it doesn't happen, Ted Cruz or Donald Trump?
Say if Rand drops out.
Let's say Rand drops out, exactly. Who would you throw your support behind? Well, not throw. Who would you reluctantly support? Ted Cruz or Donald Trump?
For starters, I wouldn't support either of them, not even reluctantly, because I don't have to. I live in a free country where I don't have to support anybody if I don't want to. That's the wonderful thing about this. But I would be, I'm a political junkie at the end of the day, and even when I hate people, even when I hate everybody across the board, I still have people I passively root for in a sense. Like, I'll think, okay, maybe things would be better if this guy won. I still won't go out and support them. That being the case, considering everything we've discussed about Ted Cruz so far, his flip-flopping, you could say the same about Donald Trump over the years, certainly, but not really so much within his campaign. The fact that he's very adamant about going to war in the Middle East, the fact that he's pretty bad on the war on drugs, I'm not sure Trump is as bad on those issues, which to me are major. Now, again, maybe Trump is blustering, maybe he's full of crap, but he's been pretty adamant. I mean, he's against the Iraq war long before he ran for president. Maybe he's not for it, not against it in the ways I might want him to be, because it's a affront to individual liberty and because of all the people dying over there. But he's maybe just opposed to it because of the cost-benefit analysis, that it makes no sense for us to be wasting all this money, dropping bombs in the Middle East, rebuilding their bridges, as one might say, and ignoring our infrastructure at home. Not that I want money spent that way by the government, but the point being, he is at least seems very reluctant to want to go to war. He's the only one that talks about, maybe I should just sit down with Vladimir Putin and talk things out. And people go off on him about that. Oh, he wants to be friends with Putin, who kills journalists and all this stuff, which we don't even know is true. But I mean, I wouldn't put it past the guy. But point being, he's talking about diplomacy, for Christ's sakes. I mean, that's a good thing that he's not talking about no-fly zones first. He's talking about meetings first. And whether or not he's genuine about it, at least I kind of get a sense that he doesn't want to just jump into wars. Whereas Ted Cruz wants to see if the Middle East can glow in the dark. Right. So,
well, you know what? There's actually,
it's really not close. Actually, I would at least want to roll the dice and see what happens with Trump. I certainly don't think Trump would be worse than Ted Cruz or most of the other Republicans. Even if the stuff he's saying is like half true, I don't think in reality, he's worse than any other neocon out there. And I really don't think he is a neocon in that sense. I mean, I think he would be an authoritarian in many ways. Again, I'm not a Trump supporter, but looking at his positions, there's actually some chart that I saw recently. Great reference, Mark. But it basically broke down all the sort of interventionist things that all the candidates say. The least interventionist when we're talking about foreign policy was Rand Paul. Right after him was Donald Trump.
Yep.
So
exactly right. And who was on the highest end was actually, I think Hillary Clinton was either highest or second highest.
Yeah, it's like her and Rubio and...
oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if they probably don't even poll Santorum in this, but he's probably like number one.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree with you completely. If I had to choose one or the other, I would go for Trump. And he's also, let's not forget this, also really in support of the Second Amendment as well. And even on the debate stage, he was like, hey, I like the guns. I have a gun. Everybody should be able to have it and protect themselves. So that's one of the points he's also very strong on. So, yeah, I would probably say
he came out
Trump.
for his latest campaign statement was that he was for like universal open carry.
Yeah.
I mean, or constitutional carry, I think, where you don't even need a permission slip, I guess, from a state to own a gun, which you do in many, many states, including the one I'm in right now, the one we're in.
Now, and I know we're going to get people say, well, what about Gary Johnson? But come on, guys. Gary Johnson, are we doing this again with Gary? It's like a tape cassette that's stuck in the player. You just can't get it out. Enough. Get it out with a hammer. Do whatever you have. Put somebody else out there. Enough of this. Enough of Gary Johnson.
These are all different things, and we're not going to know who the Libertarian Party chooses till July or so, at which point the Republican... Well, I would normally say the Republican candidate will be inevitable, but I don't know, man. This is a crazy year. If Trump gets a lot of support and the party doesn't want him there, they're going to put their support behind someone else. Then you got the third wing that might kind of be the conservatives that support maybe a Cruz, and it could get really interesting at the convention. So I'm not even sure we'll definitely know, but in theory, we should have an idea who the candidate is going to be, and we'll see who the Libertarians put forward. I mean, it's very likely I'll never vote for a Democrat or Republican again, quite frankly, because I'm not going to support those big two parties because they're corrupt, they're corporatists. We're never going to see major political change unless we stop supporting them for the most part. If Rand Paul actually got the nomination, I probably would have to support him over Hillary or whoever, the Democrats put up. But in general, luckily, even when we're going through these hypotheticals, the great thing is we don't actually need to support any of these people. If we don't agree with them. And that's our message here. You don't need to support Ted Cruz or anyone else as a second option. Because, frankly, if you support Ted Cruz for reasons other than actually knowing his positions, and frankly, I don't know if you can know his positions because he's flip-flopped on so many things. That's another thing we need to address is the amount that this guy flip-flops. How can you even trust any of his positions when he's gone back and forth on so many things? I mean, immigration, I think he's gone back and forth on. He's kind of flip-floppy on the war on drugs, like you said. I mean, it's just really difficult to trust the guy.
Yeah, completely so. Now, you mentioned Rand. Let's do a quick Randy Pants update.
I did. Since we're taking a break from the Rand pluses and minuses, and we probably won't return to it until after these next round of debates.
Well, we don't want people to get in withdrawal and start shaking and vomiting on the floor. So let's do a quick Rand update.
The RPM shakes.
My heartbeat is going crazy for the RPMs. So here's a little quick thing. So Rand's been on a media blitz over the past week and a half.
Media blitz. Media blitz. Rand Paul's hair. On a media blitz. All right.
So he was on Colbert, which he actually did a very good performance on Colbert. Came across as very likable. He was talking vaguely about legalizing pot. There was a little joke Colbert made about Rand trying to sell him pot backstage. So he was on Colbert. He was on The View. He's doing this big blitz to try to get out there, especially ahead of Iowa coming up. So that I give him a Paul for. And we also talk a lot about basically how, with all this talk about semi-automatic guns and, outlawing automatic weapons.
Oh, yeah, he was on The View.
Yeah, when he was on The View. This is great because we say this all the time. We're like, do people have any idea what they're talking about? Because most people don't. And Whoopi Goldberg, of course, didn't. So Rand Paul went on The View. Yeah, I know.
Stick to posing as a nun, Whoopi.
Oh, God. I can't even think about her face without retching. So Paul basically explained the difference between semi-automatic weapons and automatic weapons, and it basically broke it down for them, which of course went all the way over their heads. So
many people think that the weapons people use in these quote-unquote mass shootings are these guns where you pull a trigger and it just sprays bullets everywhere, and those have been illegal for a long time. Some people can get them with a special license, but you cannot go into a store and buy an automatic weapon.
Right.
Every single gun that you can buy, for the most part, is one you need to pull a trigger every time you fire. And that is true of every single mass shooting we've seen, every single instance of everything, because you can't really get machine guns. So stop acting like that's what they are.
We need to send a postcard out to every household in America explaining the difference and how you cannot go out and just
they'll only read it if it's in meme form.
Yeah. That's true. We should put this on Facebook. Get it going there.
Just tag everybody on Facebook.
Yeah. So that was a good one. I'll give him a Paulus. One more thing I want to talk about as well, and then we'll wrap this up, is I thought this was hilarious. So Rand he's campaigning in New Hampshire, and he went to a senior center to talk, and his staff said, don't talk about Social Security.
Whatever you do, these people cling to it.
It's not a positive
They're
crowd.
Literally living on it.
Right, yeah, exactly. So they said, don't do it. And Rand was like, you know what? Screw that noise. I'm still going to talk about it. And he did. To a group of seniors, he told them they got to raise the retirement age. He got to, basically just broke it down how there's too many families, there's too many retirees, we're living longer, the math does not add up. So I was really impressed by that. He said, he's not going to change his positions. He's not going to, try to lie his way around it like so many politicians do. So, Paul us.
Absolutely. Paul us.
So that's about it. There's some other small things, but we don't need to go into them right here.
Yeah, well, for more Rand stuff, you can read the weekly Rand Pluses and Minuses column, which you can find at
lionsofliberty.com/Rand.
All right. That's only a Rand with one A, by the way, not 7 like it might have sounded.
I know, it's fun to type it that way,
Brian
though.
Said it.
Like Con Rand. We should get, oh my God, James T. Kirk out here, get a little Shatner action to boost Rand's campaign.
Oh boy, maybe he can start doing our voiceovers and stuff. He's doing a lot of voiceover work nowadays.
Yeah, he is. He does a lot of. He
might be more expensive than the $5 on Fiverr I'm used to paying, but we'll see.
Maybe, but who knows? He might be desperate.
Yeah, guys, but thanks for joining us for this very special episode. It's an experiment we kind of just figured we would try because we spend so much time talking about Rand. Literally, I believe we've been doing that podcast, Rand Pluses and Minuses, since April. That's 8 months of solid Rand talk. So we figured we'd take 1 week out to talk about another politician that's getting a lot of attention from Liberty folks. And frankly, from our perspective, I think we can both agree that for the most part, Ted Cruz is Bruisin. He is not really worthy of support. He is very good on some liberty issues on the surface. His rhetoric is great. He's very good at coming across in however way he wants to come across. He's good at coming across neocon sometimes to the right people, good at coming across liberty, and that's because the guy's an expert freaking debater, and he's an incredible prosecutor, and he uses those skills to, what I would say is manipulate the electorate, manipulate people into supporting him that really shouldn't be for the most part. And the fact is, this guy really, to me, he just seems like, you ever get the feeling listening to some politicians and all you're thinking is, you just feel like a liar. And that's not evidence. That's not a fact. That's just a feeling. And when I listen to Ted Cruz, that's how I feel. I feel like I'm listening to a guy that's just too damn smooth. He's thought it all out. He's not speaking from the hip. He's not speaking from the heart. And I don't trust the guy.
It's like a gut instinct, with Ted Cruz, where you just have that natural feeling of distrust. Like an animal in the wild, the hairs on the back of your neck stick up when a predator's approaching. That's the Ted Cruz.
Kind of like Harry distrusted Severus Snape.
Exactly.
Only to realize, oh my God, he's been with me all along.
We can only hope that that's the case.
So we'll see. So maybe we'll be proven wrong. Maybe Severus Cruz, the prophecy shall come true. But until then, he has to find the we got to go find the Horcruxes first, I think.
Oh my God, where would he even hide them?
The first Horcrux is Rand's hair.
Oh, my God. Let's burn it.
So let's get on that. All right, guys. Thank you again for joining us, though. And, of course, tune in on Friday for the second edition of John Odermatt's Felony Friday podcast, our new weekly show. And until then, guys, live life!